everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webcast with Hannah. We are all so excited for this one. I think we've all been looking forward to this one since the last one she did, where she mentioned she was going to do this. So finally, we get to see it happen, which is awesome. If you haven't already joined us on our Discord server, I would definitely recommend doing that now. That's where all of the chat and QA for today is going to take place. I've gone ahead and shared the link to the Discord server inside of the GoToWebinar chat for everybody, and it's the Threat Hunter Community Discord server. Today for the webcast, we're going to be in the live webcast chat, which is near the bottom of the server, and it has the big red button on it.
Awesome.
Yeah, the big red button also shows up in the little chat window, and it's slightly distracting, but I'm not completely unnerved by the red dot there, but you know, it does make me wonder, what's going on? There's a red dot. That might be something.
Well, and anybody who presses it electrocutes Hannah, so please don't press it, whatever you do.
No.
Yeah, we're trying to make sure Hannah does not get electrocuted today, so.
I was just thinking that at least the button doesn't have the blink tag. So I missed the blink attribute.
Oh, how to not make friends, Keith. How to absolutely not do that. The other way is we had a game we played called Team Fortress. And when you run your own server, you get to change things like adding a little extra gravity or taking gravity away so everybody kind of just floats up off the surface. And I found out that there's a friction setting. And obviously, if you turn friction up to like 1,000, no one can move. There's nothing you can do to move from exactly where you are. And people get annoyed at that. But they don't get as annoyed as when you turn the friction to minus 1,000. Because all of a sudden you take like a half a step forward and you are all the way at the other end of the map. And so this turns into just this attempt to try to say, well, I want to get somewhere over there. Maybe if I turn right at this angle and I step forward a little bit. Oh, damn, it didn't work. I ran into something. You've never seen such angry people in chat as when I did that. And it's just, I don't consider myself a troll, but that was one of the times it was fun to troll.
Or some of the available.
Wasn't that like a beer ad? I don't consider myself a troll, but when I do troll,
that's right. I play Team Fortress and I set friction to minus 1,000.
But come on, Bill. Let's be honest. That was not the only like trolley type thing you did on Team Fortress.
Oh, not at all. To show up as a medic and then spend the entire game infecting people. That's fun. That's fun.
See, Team Fortress was what convinced me you weren't some weird axe murderer. because when we first met, because when we first met, I was like, oh, this guy's too nice, right? There's always that, you see the news story like, oh, he was such a quiet neighbor. I never expected him to go crazy and kill everybody on his side of the street. It was like one of those, you were like that nice of a guy. You were never like an evil person to anybody. And that, I'll be honest, from my security perspective, that troubled me. So it wasn't until I saw you playing Team Fortress and being a complete a-hole to people that I said, oh, okay, he does have an evil side. It just only comes out in Team Fortress. That's perfectly acceptable. He's a balanced person. Life is good.
And the only part about that story that doesn't quite fit is that if people interviewed, the people up and down my street said, did you believe that he could do this? And they'd be all like, oh, yeah, we absolutely believe he could set fire to a nursery or something like that. Yeah, he could have done that.
Yeah, he gave us that weird deal.
That or the news crews would catch the police bringing out all of your Lego sets from the basement. And then some conspiracy theory that, well, it was Legos that made him do it. So
yes.
Oh, man.
That trying to collect all the hard drives from the basement, which would require an 18-wheeler.
If only he had the 6-peg block, it would have been fine.
Yeah. As a child, he never had it.
Well, hey, if you are just joining us or this is your first active Countermeasures webcast, this is not the actual webcast quite yet. This is what we like to call pre-show banter time. So we like to join the webcast a little early. That way we can get to know you guys a little better. You can get to know us, which reminds me again, if you have not already joined us in the Discord server, please do so now. We're in the Threat Hunter Community Discord server, and near the bottom of the channels, you'll see one called the Live Webcast Chat. It has that red button we were talking about earlier, and that's where you can chat with us today or ask any questions during the webcast. And yes, Darren is mentioning the disembodied voice. So on camera, you'll see Bill Stearns, Keith Chu, Chris Chu, me, Shelby, and then Hannah. And then you will hear Chris in the background as well. Because, you know, gotta have a little more ominous to the webcast too. So
who just found the icon response they can use, which is people with bunny ears partying. That to me was the perfect response to JAK asking, so I take it everyone is aware of the Twitch leak today.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, that was bad. So the folks who aren't aware, they lost everything. I mean, there's like all the Twitch code since Twitch was first made, every version, all the, you know, all the code for that went out, all the customers. The only thing that seemed to be limited was it was payouts to, you know, people who were making money off of Twitch, but it was only from 2019, which I thought was kind of odd. But yeah, all the software side projects they've developed. I mean, someone like, I don't know, I looked at it and I'm like, oh, this just smells like Insider. It really does. There's just too much information there for one person for someone to find in like one spot. So,
128 gig of downloads.
Yeah. Yeah. Captain Carlson said it's open source now. Well, sort of, right?
Oh man.
That's awesome.
We didn't intend to be open source, but hey, everybody can see our code now. So.
Yeah. Wow.
Hey Keith, what's on the sign today?
Actually, it's in honor of your webcast. Can you read it?
I can't read it.
Too small.
It's too small?
Yeah, too small.
Well, it says IEYE CFEA MEM and PEA. So it's ICMP. I know there's a name for that, but I don't know. I can't remember what it's called. Or you make words sound
Keith,
like letters.
Keith, if I didn't know better, I'd swear you drank tequila a lot.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think the drink of the week is vodka.
Okay.
Actually,
Okay.
Was I not supposed to try remedy number 6 before the webcast?
At least not in the volume that our coworker was suggesting.
Yes. So one of our developers, Lisa, is originally from the Ukraine. And when Hannah was saying, hey, I'm having problems with my voice, I need a way to recover it quickly before this webcast, which is why we're talking a lot to try and make sure she doesn't have to, so she can save her voice for next hour. Lisa came up with like the home remedies from the Ukraine, and some of them were like quite frightening. There was a lot that involved vodka. I do remember.
Yeah, almost everyone had some form of vodka stuff. You either rub it on you or.
Yeah, let's see. Gargle salt water. I mean, super saturated salt water. Gargle baking soda. Gargle vodka. Honeywood vodka. Rub vodka on chest / vodka compress. So clearly,
Oh my
vodka.
God.
This is coffee.
Yeah, I was saying earlier that it reminded me of the movie. I think it was called My Greek Wedding, where
Oh
the
yes,
family,
with the Windex.
yeah, the remedy for everything was spray Windex on it.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Let's see. Nobody is going to bring up the great Facebook outage of 2021. So the thing that kind of caught my attention with that one was that their BGP table went away, which I found kind of interesting because, so go back many, many years, back before a lot of you were probably even born. And when people would spam on the internet, the response from the cabal that kind of ran the internet at the time was, oops, your BGP routes have gone away. We don't know how that happened. All of a sudden, you couldn't route anything in or out. And that did a very good job of motivating people to make sure spam did not leave their environment. Because if spam leaving your environment and annoying people meant that all your internet connectivity went away, and it didn't matter how much you yelled and screamed at your ISP, they couldn't do anything about it. That kind of motivated you to make sure you didn't release spam. And then, the cabal kind of went away, and, managing the internet became a global thing, and that became less of a possibility. So this is the first time I've seen, come on. I mean, Facebook was on TV trying to claim they didn't know about any of the stuff that's coming out that there is documentation saying they knew about. And at that moment, their BGP tables went away. It could be a coincidence. Hey, let's go run out and play the lottery because it's that kind of a lucky day. But I just kind of find that too conspicuous.
A great way to change the conversation.
Yeah, let's not talk about what it did. Let's deflect.
Yeah.
It's also a wonderful lesson when you're trying to think about incident response. If your BGP routing tables go away, how do you get to the routers that are going to fix that problem? If your DNS infrastructure.
Especially in the era of COVID, when most people are remote. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's the thing I was talking to a couple of folks about yesterday was like, no, this is bad, because normally you can VPN in and kind of tweak things as you need to. And even if DNS goes away, all right, most of us know the IP addresses we absolutely have to get to if something bad happens, but those don't work anymore either. And I don't know, so maybe the new thing is run IPv4 and IPv6 simultaneously. And, now if you piss off the powers that be and they drop your IPv4 from BGP, maybe they forget about your IPv6 and you can still get some level of connectivity. I mean, I don't know. This is kind of an interesting one. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, and actually IPv6 is very easy to forget because I can't remember a single address.
I've got one down, : 1, and that's my laptop.
Yeah.
Nobody else can use that. Nobody else.
Yeah.
Yes. And Bill, I don't want to know the word association you use to remember that one. So.
Oh, you do not. Trust me on this one. Nope. It involves a trip to the doctor you don't want to remember.
JSN saying, seems a little crazy. Agree with Chris, them going down while in Congress being interviewed has amazing timing. Yeah, like I said, it's just too convenient.
Yeah.
That this wasn't maybe a little on purpose, but yeah, I gotta be honest, I have trouble feeling bad.
Me too.
I mean, it could be like this. If this happened to Dark Trace of Vector AI or one of our competitors, I'd feel bad. I'd feel outraged. But it's Facebook. They're kind of destroying the world, and they're okay with it because they're making money. I mean, it's kind of hard to feel bad about that. So.
But you know what it kind of makes me think of is like you're in high school and get called to the principal's office. So you whack yourself on the kneecap to go to the nurse instead.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Keith. The longer we get to work with each other, the more I understand about your psyche. I get these little insights here and there.
Yeah. I'm scared. You're as effed up as I am.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's something you may have done before, Keith.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's part of my my high school tricks and tips.
Well, at least you're not in front of a few thousand people explaining that. That's a good thing. Yeah. Good thing
really.
it's private.
Speaking of good Keith finds, so Wild West Hacking Fest, which was last week, the week before, a month ago, I don't know. They all kind of run together at this point. But Keith kind of picked up on a DDoS attack or a DOS attack that was taking place against our website. Keith, have you seen the stats for the site out of Cloudflare?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've looked at them. Yeah, well, this one IP actually made 2.4 million requests in 24 hours.
Yeah.
We think he's
Our overall-
really interested in our product, like really interested.
Yeah, that's what
Our overall traffic went up 200% over the previous month just because of the one attack.
yeah, we're doing awesome.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Maybe I should take that to the boss. So look at the analytics from last month compared to this month.
Yeah, exactly.
The changes we made are
Now,
just
what
brilliant.
Yeah, really. Now, what I thought was funny is in their reporting, there's 200% more traffic. So that's highlighted in green, like, yay, this is a good thing. But they also recorded a 200% rise in security issues. But that's in red, like it's a bad thing. Like, well, wait a minute. Why is it, it's the same plus 200%. Why is one good? Why is one bad? I don't understand.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But
Okay,
if there's
it was
like
fun. I mean,
any
because-
doubt where the problem children live, let's see. The United Kingdom, in the month of August, we saw 604 attacks that they went through and they dealt with for us. Thank you. And from the United States, it was just shy of 20 million.
Let's see. What foreign country should we block? Oh, wait. That doesn't work.
Yeah. Germany is second. There was 678 attacks detected from them. So
Wow.
the rest of the world is in the hundreds. The United States, 20 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
think-
go USA. Yay.
I think Iowa's next to go.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, it's a never-ending battle.
But I will say, Keith, it is like a testament to the solidity of the infrastructure you set up that attack took place. And I didn't know about it until like you and I were like chatting like a week later.
Yeah.
When you mentioned it in passing, like, oh yeah, so when our website was getting DOSed, it was like, what? Wait, when did that happen? Oh, I took care of it. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
I haven't heard him, and he about had a meltdown over here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I kind of laughed at my own response because you were obviously concerned. You're like, oh, wow. It's like, I didn't even know that. And my response was, oh, do you want to know these things? And I actually made myself laugh. It's like, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Kind of run the company be a good idea if I was in the loop when people are trying to take us offline. Yes.
Yeah. But a lot of times, if it's something that I kind of fix and resolve, I just move on. It's like, okay, yeah, got taken care of. No big deal.
Makes me miss the mirror firewall module for Linux, where you take any given stream of incoming packets that you want and you swap the incoming and outgoing addresses and ports and ship it right back at the sender, which is totally unethical on like 9,000 different levels. But it's just this wonderful sense that, well, if I really wanted to, I could piss them off by sending that traffic right back at them.
Yep. And you're absolutely right. That's the biggest test of my restraint is whenever you're dealing with these kind of things, and of course I would never retaliate, but of course you want to.
Yep. Yep, exactly. It'll never happen. That's why we're no longer called offensive countermeasures. We're active countermeasures.
Yeah, well, that name could be taken wrong too, so
That's true.
I'd rather not be known as offensive.
Oh, I frequently am. Trust me on this one. Yep.
Yeah.
Everyone who's ever met me.
Yep.
Hey, and actually,
Well,
speaking of
and the,
wildlife,
like having that visceral reaction to something like this. So, Bill, I'm hoping this is not going to be too embarrassing with you, but I can remember like many, many years ago, back before like the statute of limitation would like absolutely not apply for this at all. One of the first an internet worm came out that was going after binds specifically running on Linux systems. And, in case no one's like figured it out on their own, Bill is very much a Linux advocate, always have been, which is why we pick on him about Windows all the time. You could put a Windows system in front of him and he would literally be completely lost. But, give him a stripped down Linux kernel and he's fine. He'll echo any files he needs to create and that type of thing. He's like totally in his element. So when Linux started getting picked on, oh, that like totally pissed them off. And this was back before we had patch management or any of that crap. So if you wanted a patch bind, basically you had to go get the new source code and pull it down and compile it and build it and install it. And that was beyond most of the people that were running Linux. So Linux was not getting fixed. And Bill, I can remember having a conversation with you one night about, hey, I could just write a worm that could run around the internet and patch it. No, don't do that. I was like, why not? It'll only patch. I won't leave a backdoor. No, don't do that. But it's just going to fix things. What could possibly be wrong? No, don't do that.
I think that was easily an hour-long conversation, and I couldn't see the downside for it. I really couldn't at that time. I really couldn't. But if I'd stopped and thought about how well-meaning individuals had tried to do similar things in the past and brought the internet down in the process, yes, I should have learned their lesson.
Well, especially since we were both hanging around with Robert Morris's dad at the time.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
exactly.
So if folks don't know who Robert Morris is, there's actually two of them. There's one of them that is who's done many things that probably still can't be made public record, but one of the things he's credited with is he wrote DES encryption, which you can say what you want about DES now, but the only real problem with DES is that the key space is too small based on CPU power today. As far as encryption algorithms go, that thing was freaking kick-ass. There were very few vulnerabilities found, and the ones that were very, very minor. So Robert Morris Sr. is just, he's one of my gurus. He's one of the people that I always admired. Robert Morris Jr. is known for writing the first internet worm that ran around and like took everybody offline, and people started disconnecting from the internet and all sorts of things. And that was kind of he didn't want to take the internet offline. It was basically a research project. He wanted to go see, hey, how many systems can I talk to that have an vulnerability in them, and maybe this can be leveraged to do something like patch them or whatever. And
Yep.
what he didn't think through was how quickly this worm would propagate and how quickly it would keep trying to infect the same system over and over again. He had some sort of a catch in place, but it just did not understand internet speed.
It was a bug in his check that didn't work. And I've got to say, Chris, I know we're cutting into your time, Hannah. Apologies, but Robert Morris Jr. is actually a really nice and really bright guy.
Yes,
who's working at MIT and deserves a whole lot of credit. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a shame that he's remembered just for that, because he's contributed a lot to the internet since.
So let's change the topic. He should also be known for web-based mail. He was part of that crew that said, we want to have applications that don't need to run on Windows. How are we going to do it? Let's figure out how to get this to work with a web server. And he was one of the guys that did a majority of the coding for that. So
very cool.
And I agree with Bill. Very nice individual. Very cool person.
Yes.
Shelby, we'll turn it back to you.
Awesome. Yes, we have hit the top of the hour, so pre-show banter is unfortunately over, and it's time to start the awesome webcast we've all been waiting for. Before we get started, I just want to cover a couple housekeeping things real quick. One more time, I'm going to mention to everybody to join us on Discord for chat and QA during the webcast. I've shared the link inside of the GoToWebinar chat for everybody, and we are in the Threat Hunter Community Discord server in the live webcast chat channel, which is near the bottom of our server. And right underneath that channel, you'll see one called ACM Webcast Content. In that channel, you can find the PDF of the slide deck for today. Along with that, I do want to mention this webcast is being recorded. So if you can't stick around for the whole thing, that's okay. We'll have the raw recording posted on Discord within the next few hours after the webcast ends. And then we'll have the edited version of it posted to our YouTube channel within the next few weeks. Along with that, you'll also receive an email tomorrow afternoon containing a certificate of attendance from today. And with that, Hannah, I will pass it over to you.
All right, so welcome everybody. Today's webcast is ICMP protocol from a security perspective. I'm super excited. So my name is Hannah. I'm a graduate student at the University of Utah in Computer Systems and Networks, Also, obviously, I'm an intern at Active Countermeasures. Before we start, just wanted to give a special shout out to everyone behind the scenes on the webcast today and who made this all possible. All right, so with that, let's jump right in. What is the ICMP protocol? The ICMP protocol is used for either two things, error reporting or just kind of informal generic messages. Error reporting is super important for diagnosing connection issues between hosts, networks, or pretty much any device that connects to the internet. It can also be used for discovering and mapping network environments. And of course, how most people know it is like for the ping protocol, just the basic way to verify connectivity between hosts. So here I have a diagram of the structure of a ping packet. So ICMP is a network layer protocol, so it's right above IP, and a 1 in the IP header field indicates that it's an ICMP packet that should be processed. So all ICMP packets have these first two fields that you see here, the type and then the code. The type just tells you what kind of error message it is. So for example, pings, ICMP echo requests are type 8 and 0 is echo reply. And then the code indicates more detailed, a more detailed error message about that specific type. And then of course there's a checksum because everywhere has a checksum. And then the ID and sequence number are specific to the echo packets. So like type 3s or type 11s won't have this, but pings do. And then it also has a payload portion. Usually these are empty, but the fact that there's like, I think 1,400 something bytes of payload data you can add is super important because that can be used for things like C2 that we'll see later. Right, so this is just the same kind of packet shown in Wireshark. So if you open the ICMP header, you can see the types, codes, and then the identifier and sequence number in Big Endian and Little Endian. And we can see here there's nothing in the payload section. Error reporting. So there's a very long list of ICMP types and codes. And I decided I'm going to be nice today, and I will spare you all the agony of going through all of them. So we're just going to look at some of the important ones. Also, some of them, like type 4s and type 15 information requests, are deprecated, as well as a bunch of other ones. So type 11s, time exceeded, are an important one. Code 0 stands for what port does ping use? So ICMP doesn't use ports to answer the question in the Discord. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. Sometimes it shows up as port 0. Oh yeah, so code 0s stand for TTL exceeded, and there's several reasons this could happen. So the purpose of the TTL, the time to live, is to ensure that packets don't spend their lives wandering the network in search of a destination they will never find. Kind of like how Frodo and Sam just hang out in Middle-earth for a while and get lost. So what I mean is if there's a routing issue or something that prevents the packets from being deliverable, it could end up in like a routing loop bouncing from router to router forever and taking up network bandwidth. So the way having a time to live fixes this is that after a certain number of hops, the TTL will expire since it's decremented at each router, and then that packet will be destroyed and the ICMP type 11 will be sent back. This can also be used for things like Traceroute, which we're also going to discuss later. And then code 1 is for fragment reassembly time exceeded. So this will happen if like a packet gets fragmented and then you don't get all of the pieces you need to put it back together. Let's see. And type 5s are redirect messages. The redirects are used to inform a host that there's a more optimal routing mechanism, there's a more optimal route for a packet going to a specific destination. So for example, if a packet gets sent to a switch and then to router 1, and maybe router 1 sees that the next place the packet needs to go is router 2, but then that requires going back through the same switch. The router can send a redirect message to redirect all further packets to the same destination to just go straight to router 2 and not router 1. ICMP type 3s are destination unreachables. These are definitely the most common type of error messages. And they tell you when you can't get to some resource on the internet. And so these are interesting because the device that sends the unreachable packet back can't just say unreachable, it has to tell you what exactly is unreachable. So the type tells you something is unreachable, and then the code tells you what exactly that is. Network unreachable errors occur when a packet gets to a router which does not have an entry in its routing table for the destination of a packet. And then we also have host unreachables, which are usually sent by a router once the packet makes it into like the subnet it was destined for, but the specific host is down or not responding. So since you can configure these, or you can configure hosts to respond to ICMP requests pretty much however you want. One sneaky thing that Chris likes to do is have a host that's on the internet very much up and alive send back ICMP unreachable messages for itself. And then we also have port unreachables, which are a common error when you try to connect to a port and that port is closed or there's nothing running on it. So as you can see, these are super helpful for debugging. However, they can also be used for C2 or, for example, the port unreachable could be used for port scanning. They're also good for C2 because they're one of the few types of packets that are supposed to contain a payload. So type 3s typically send back the original IP packet that caused the error to take place. And I think Chris and some of the threat hunters at Active Countermeasures actually found a command and control channel that was using type 3s to communicate. And the way they discovered it was because the original packet that was being sent back never actually existed on the network. So maybe if Chris is on later, I'll ask him to talk about that one a little more. So here we have, if you're really interested in this stuff, a comprehensive list of all the types and codes that y'all can look at on your own time. So let's talk about Traceroute. Hey, if you try to connect to a website through a port, you might get an ICMP unreachable packet. I think yes, but it wouldn't be because I'm not sure I understand that question actually. So let's talk about Traceroute. Traceroute is another great application of ICMP that uses, it's used to map the route that a packet takes from one source to one destination, meaning sending back the addresses of all the routers. So the way I like to think of it is it's the closest thing we have to Google Maps, but for packets. So it's a great utility for finding out where exactly connection issues are happening or where bottlenecks in the network could be. However, it can also be leveraged for reconnaissance and mapping a target's network topology. So the way that works is obviously each router has a publicly addressable IP address, and that's how they communicate with each other. So Traceroute will send a packet with a time to live of 1 destined to this destination it wants to get to way over here. But that packet will get to the first router, which will decrement the TTL to 0. And then because the TTL is 0, it'll destroy the packet and send back the ICMP time exceeded. And then that tells the host, which router this is. So then the host sends another packet with a TTL of 2. That makes it 2 hops, gets to the second router kills it, sends an ICMP time exceeded. And then that process essentially goes on until a router finally gets to its destination. Sometimes you'll see if you're running Traceroute, the it'll just stop working after a certain number of hops. And that's usually because some networks block traceroute packets so that they can't respond. And then if there are, routers on the other side of the network that's blocking them, that network will block those too. Another thing you'll often see is that instead of router information you get back, you might get like 3 asterisks. And this means usually that the device wasn't configured to respond to the UDP or ICMP probes that the host is sending. Typically in that case though, your packets still are getting through. This host just doesn't know how to respond. All right, so if my voice progressively keeps sounding worse throughout the webcast, it's because I've been sick all weekend. So please just bear with me. So now we're going to talk about some of the ways that attackers use the ICMP protocol. There's a bunch of different creative things you can do. Some of these attacks are older, but they're still worth talking about because history likes to repeat itself, and the internet is definitely no exception to that. So one of the things ICMP is often used for is OS fingerprinting. Because the TCP/IP stack is implemented differently on different operating systems, it's possible to determine which OS is running on the host based on the time to live of the packets that host sends. Some common TTLs are for Cisco networking equipment. It's usually like 255. I think Windows systems have always been around 128. And most Linux systems use TTL of 64. So the different TTLs mean that, for example, if you send a ping command to a system and the system responds with an echo reply, you can use the TTL on the response to guess the operating system. It's important to know that you'll never get back exactly one of those values since each hop, well, you'll get back one of those values if the two hosts are directly connected, but otherwise each hop along the way is going to decrement the TTL. So it's a little bit of the guessing game, but still works. Like for example, if you see a TTL of 53, it's probably Linux. You can tell 118 is probably Windows, etc. Can you change the default TTL for devices? Yes, and you can also just craft packets with whatever TTL you want to. So you could do that with like Python, just say, send a TTL of 255 from my Linux system, and that's totally a possibility. So another way you can do OS fingerprinting is with Traceroute, not with Traceroute, sorry, with Nmap, and that's the -O flag. So you can see in the screenshot, it says aggressive OS guesses, and then it gives you a list of which host it thinks is running in order of confidence. And this does not actually use ICMP. This uses like TCP or UDP. I just wanted to show another way of doing this. So for example, if a host is blocking ICMP, you could still do OS fingerprinting this way. Or if for somehow they're blocking the TCP or UDP probes used to do this, then you could go back to using ICMP. So while we're on the subject of Nmap, another thing you can do is ping sweeps. Ping sweeps are for host discovery. So with Nmap, this is the -SN option, and you can give it either a singular IP address, or as you see here, you can give it a whole network range. And if you give it a network range, what Nmap will do is it'll send out requests to each of the addresses in that range to try to determine if the host is online. Now this will not work for machines that block ICMP. There's another Nmap option that uses TCP or UDP instead. However, that one uses ports, and so the accuracy of the results depends on if the ports are online or not. So this is another attack that I added pretty last minute. So I don't know if it's in the downloaded slide deck. I hope it is. And this is the ICMP redirect attack, which uses type 5 to hijack entries in the routing table and help an attacker perform a man-in-the-middle attack. So this attack has to be done with access to the target network. It's not something that can go over the internet, because to change entries in the routing table, you have to be in the same collision domain. So type 5s can be used to modify the routing table without authentication from the other systems on the same domain. And this is how you launch a redirect attack. So for example, if you wanted to machine in the middle your traffic going out to this target server over here, you send a redirect to this router claiming that a better route is available for that target that actually redirects them through an attacker-controlled server. That could be like this Kali machine right here. All right, so next I want to talk about the ping of death attack. This one is pretty old, so I imagine a lot of people have heard about it before. It's a denial of service attack that consists of sending a singular malformed ping packet to a router machine, causing it to then crash. The way this works is by exploiting a vulnerability in the way that the operating system handles packets that are larger than the buffer size. So an attacker could craft a malformed ICMP request and send it over. That request would get fragmented based on the MTU, the maximum transmittable unit, on the sender's side. And then once the receiver gets that, what it would do is try to reassemble all those packets without checking the bounds on the buffer against the total size of each fragment. Obviously, this would exceed the allocated memory on the receiver side, which would cause a buffer overflow, which could lead to the target machine crashing. So this attack was discovered back in 1997 and then was patched in 2013. The fix for that buffer overflow attacks is pretty easy. You just check the offset and data fragment of each incoming fragment against the total buffer size to check for an overflow before attempting to process that packet. I think it's still a pretty interesting one to talk about, though, because as mentioned earlier, history likes to repeat itself. So there's a very, very similar attack to the ping of death that worked on IPv6. And this was patched about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, in October of 2020. So this vulnerability specifically exploited the implementation of the IPv6 recursive DNS server router advertisements. Router advertisements are ICMP type 9 and IPv4, but then in 6, they're type 134. It's pretty similar to the original vulnerability. The issue is that the operating system didn't properly handle when the router advertisements were larger than they should have been. And so this caused a similar kind of buffer overflow, which has the potential vulnerabilities for a DOS attack via taking the system offline. ICMP tunneling. So this works the same way tunneling over most protocols does. It injects arbitrary data into the payload of an ICMP packet and then sends it to a destination, usually running some software program that knows how to decode these special packets. That part's important. So this can be used for C2, but it can also be used for tunneling traffic out to the internet, for example, to get around Wi-Fi paywalls and such. Like if you're at an airport or hotel, there's usually captive Wi-Fi portals that block all HTTP and HTTPS traffic until you put in a username or password or pay for them. However, often these networks will allow ICMP or DNS. DNS is also common for this. And so if you have a server out on the internet awaiting for tunneled traffic and you can get your DNS or ICMP requests out to there, you can kind of bypass the captive portals that way. Active Countermeasures does not endorse this or any illegal activities, just for the record. And also, if you do this, you could get an internet connection, but it's going to be a very, very, very slow internet connection. And so unless you have full packet captures or some way to inspect the payload of these packets, it's pretty hard to figure out what exactly is in the payload of a ICMP or DNS packet. It also is possible that the data will be encrypted, depending on the channel and stuff that you're using. So now we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is C2 over ICMP. And I put a lot of work in this slide, so please enjoy it. The structure of C2 over ICMP is pretty similar to that of other C2 channels. And the PCAP we're going to look at, I think, is provided in the Discord. Yeah, I see Keith just put a link to it. And I'm looking at the 32-hour version. So the way ICMP over something like echo requests works, thank you, I agree, it's my favorite slide. So the way this works is an infected computer will send out a ping request to the server. So obviously the attacker first has to infect this system, and then this is like a post-exploitation technique. They send those pings to the server. The server has some way of distinguishing them from normal ICMP traffic and processes them accordingly, and then sends back a command for the infected computer to execute in an echo reply. This can work from behind a firewall since the server on the inside is the one sending the requests and not the replies. Otherwise, both hosts would have to be exposed to the internet. So you can do pretty much, you can get a remote shell or pretty much anything you could do over a normal C2 channel with this. And then after you send the echo reply with a command, the infected machine executes the command, grabs the results, and can then put that in another echo request to go be processed by the server. All right, so I took this screenshot. And then I started laughing because it reminds me of those things you see on like the puzzles you see on like Facebook or Instagram or sometimes in like kids' books that says, can you find the 10 things wrong with this photo? So in this photo, I only found about 6 things wrong, but maybe y'all can help me find some more. So this is taken from the 32-hour Ping C2 PCAP. We have an internal host 10.0.0.60 connecting to this external host out on the internet. So there's several ways to figure out that this is probably not legitimate traffic. One is the length here. You should never see an echo request that's more than, I think, 64 bytes. Usually it's like 42 or something. So that's your first red flag. And then the time to live that it's getting back is, or the time to the TTL that it's sending is 255. And since this is our internal system, we would know that that is a Windows system. So that's kind of weird. Okay, the no response found isn't necessarily an indicator of compromise, but it's definitely more suspicious than getting a response. And then here, luckily, our attacker seems to have been lazy and not encrypted the data before communicating it. So we can actually inspect the payload of this packet. So what this looks like to me is someone trying to do an ls command or kind of map out the directory structure of this computer. If you choose to go through the rest of this PCAP on your own, I think you can probably figure out the entire directory structure of the Windows machine that this was run on. You might also find like my passwords and bank records, who knows. And then this circle isn't showing up right, but you can see we filtered the PCAP for ICMP protocol. And it says the packets displayed is close to 400,000. that's another indicator that something weird is going on. Because that's just a lot of ICMP packets that we can see are mostly all going to the same host in this scenario. Yes, the ping requests are being sent from the host to the C2 channel. So at this point, you might be wondering, do people actually use this in real life? And it turns out the answer is at least every once in a while, yes, they do. So the pingback malware was discovered a little less than a year ago. As you can probably guess by the name, it tunnels traffic in echo requests and echo replies. The fact that ICMP does not use ports plays to the advantage of being stealthy, since the malware and the traffic won't show up on something like, it won't show up under programs listed by like netstat. C2 just stands for command and control. So it's the remote channel between your computer and the attacker-controlled server. So one super interesting thing about this malware was it used sequence numbers to determine which packets belong to its program and which ones were regular ICMP packets. So it specifically looked for packets with a set of like 5 or so sequence numbers, and anything else it did not try to process. And then from those set of sequence numbers, each one had more information about the data that was contained in the packet. So like based on which sequence number it was, you could see if it was a command, if it was data, just to check in, etc. One idea I've been thinking of attempting to implement or exploring more is the extent to which you could use the metadata, kind of like steganographically, to try to create the most realistically sized ICMP packets you can for C2 so that they're the most undetectable. But I'm not sure there's enough data that could be used for that to be effective. All right, so now we've looked at some different ICMP attacks, and the next obvious question is, what can we do about them? So one thing everyone can do is configure your router and firewall to drop malformed packets. Some network administrators just disable ICMP entirely, but ICMP has a lot of legitimate use cases, and so that's not always a good idea. And what you can do also kind of depends on the capabilities of your firewall and such as well. What I mean by dropping malformed packets is something like we said a ping should never be more than 64 bytes. So if you consistently get ones of 200 bytes, that's probably not legitimate. And this applies to all traffic as well. Like you probably want to drop packets with invalid TCP flag combinations and such as well. So another way we can look for command and control channels is network threat hunting, which I'm sure you all were expecting because this wouldn't be an active countermeasures webcast without threat hunting. But seriously, this is one of the best ways I think that this can be detected. So what you see here is a screenshot taken from our open source tool, Rita. If you want to look at it yourself, the command is show long connections. So ICMP is tricky because it's a stateless protocol, and that means it doesn't use ports the way TCP and UDP does, and it doesn't have the same idea of a connection either. Our program Rita ingests Zeek logs, and Zeek actually has a pretty good way of handling this. So Zeek has a timeout of 1 minute. So requests made less than, if the requests are made less than 1 minute apart, it'll process them as though they're all kind of the same connection. And that's what we can see here. If you had a ICMP C2 channel that was more than sent requests maybe 2 or 3 minutes apart, then this would probably display beaconing behavior, which would also show up in Rita with the show beacons command. So here you can see it just identifies the port as 0, just kind of as a placeholder, protocol ICMP. And then in this case, it looks like a connection that's been open for almost 1 day and 8 hours. There's no legitimate reason that I can think of, at least, that 2 systems would be pinging each other that long. Usually anything over about like 5 hours is worth looking at. So one common question is, should you just block ICMP traffic? And like most questions in the world, this is really complicated. So blocking or rate limiting all ICMP traffic will make your life a lot harder when you need to track down connectivity issues, or if doing this actually induces connectivity issues. Rate limiting inbound traffic is often easier because that will give you kind of the best balance between the ability to check connectivity and prevent DDoS or DOS attacks. Also, a lot of people opt to just block certain types of traffic. So, for example, type 3's host unreachables are usually pretty great for debugging. You probably wouldn't want to block them in most cases. But type 3 code 3 is port unreachable, which is likely to be used for port scanning. And then how much fine-grained control you get over this also depends on the capabilities of the firewall that you have in place. So a Smurf attack is another attack that you can kind of mitigate with rate limiting. A Smurf attack is when you send ICMP packets into the network with a spoofed source address. And then they go to the broadcast address and start getting sent around and just saturate the network with a bunch of traffic. This is pretty uncommon nowadays, though, and pretty low risk. As much as you definitely should try to protect your systems, there's a lot of, like, I would argue that you never want to make your debugging harder. I worked in a VR lab over the summer, a virtual reality lab, and I think I spent 2 days trying to get software to connect between 2 different machines. And eventually what I found out was that they were both set up to block ping requests. So that was 2 days of my life that I'll never get back. So that's all the content I have for you. My voice survived, but I always make these too short. So Chris, if you're on, would you want to talk more about the ICMP packet or the ICMP C2 channel you found that was using type 3s?
Oh, that was, wow, that was ages ago. So yeah, so that was probably like 20 years ago I ran across that. And basically what it was someone had reported seeing, so these came back, these were kind of odd. So these were, it was unreachable messages that were going to the broadcast address, or excuse me, going to the network address. It was going to the .0 address on a Class C subnet. So we looked at that and like, that's kind of odd. Why is an unreachable message going to the network address? Because unreachables, as Hannah described, get generated when you try to get something that you can't. Maybe you're getting blocked, maybe it's too many hops, whatever the case may be, you did something to cause you to get that error message to say you can't get there from here. Well, this is a unreachable message going to the network address .0, and we're like, there's no way the network's generating these. What's going on? And what we figured out was we had older SunOS systems that go back far enough in history, and they use .0 as the broadcast address, and they used 255 as the network address. And then, so that was BSD that was doing that. And then System 5 was using what we use today. So those 2 Unix systems couldn't talk to each other, so they flipped a coin and decided, okay, we'll make .0 network, 255 broadcast, but one of the things Sun did is they said, okay, for backwards compatibility, since no one should be transmitting to the .0 address anyway, we'll handle it like a broadcast and we'll read that packet in. So what the compromised system was doing was taking this unreachable packet that was going to .0, which everybody thought was the network address, but for backwards compatibility was being processed like a broadcast address. And when it saw that packet, that was its marching orders, and they could actually control multiple systems on the same subnet all at the same time, so long as they were SunOS boxes. So yeah, that was that unreachable one you were talking about, Hannah.
Awesome. I forgot I had one more slide, which is a quote that I believe to be from Chris, and he looked at these slides and didn't comment on it, so I'm going to go with that.
That was not me.
That's it. Not all anomalous traffic is bad, but all traffic is anomalous. So ultimately, packets are just streams of bytes formatted in a certain way that they will be interpreted as a packet of a specific protocol. Now that being said, because they were designed with certain purposes in mind, it's hard to generate malicious traffic that looks like those normal use cases. So in most cases, if you want to do something bad, you're going to have to edit the payload size, use the wrong sequence number, spoof source addresses that don't exist. It's really hard to make non-legitimate traffic look exactly like legitimate traffic. But we've seen attackers can get pretty close. With that, I can take questions. There's also references to the RFCs and then the pingback malware, some of the stuff we talked about earlier.
And Hannah, just to toss it in there, there's been a couple of folks asking about, hey, where do I find that link to the PCAP? Where do I find that link to the PCAP? I added it to the ACM webcast content channel, which is the one right below the one we're using for chat. So there you can go to get Hannah's slides as well as the PCAP she was referring to.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Chris. That actually makes sense. It doesn't get buried in the channel every 5 minutes.
Hey, don't go accusing me of making sense. You're gonna like totally ruin my image.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Were these slides in the Discord? Did you all want the PPT extension or the PDF? The PDF I think should be posted, right?
Yeah, so not to be the a-hole in the room, but I find that when we provide actual PowerPoint slides, they tend to end up in other places without any pointers coming back to us that we were the ones that do it. It's more work to try and redo it if you've got PDFs. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but for the lazy people that like to steal work, it makes it a little bit harder. I actually had to do a DMCA takedown this week from somebody doing that type of thing. So PDF should be fine.
Awesome. And Hannah, the PDF that we did post wasn't the fully updated one. So if you want to send through a newer PDF version that has all of the slides, we can get that posted inside the Discord for everybody. And
sounds good. Yeah, I know I sent you like probably 3 different versions. I blame Chris.
Yes.
Oh yeah, Chris is the king of last minute updates too, so that wouldn't surprise me.
Whoa, wait a minute. So Hannah, when did you send me those to take a look at?
All right, okay. Possibly this morning.
Possibly at 11 o'clock last night.
Okay, but your first comment was at 3 a.m.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't sleep.
All right, and we are getting 1 or 2 questions inside the Discord as well. Someone's asking, Hannah, how big of a payload can ICMP carry or has been seen to carry?
Good
Don't
question.
quote me on this. I think it's 1,472 bytes.
I'll quote you on that.
It's slightly less than you need to send the plain text version of the Declaration of Independence. Yes, I tested this.
Yeah. It's going to come down to network MTU. Most networks are using 1480. So that's, there's no restriction that an ICMP packet has to be artificially small. So you fall back on the MTUs of the network. Standard MTU is 1480. So when you're talking a single packet, 1480. Now, with that said, if I have more data than is needed in a single packet, I can certainly send it that way. And the slide Hannah was showing that showed all the echo replies going back was exactly that. It was just more data than would fit in a single packet. So.
And another question I'm seeing, usually I see ping is used for ICMP tunneling. Can we use trace for the same?
Use like Traceroute. Traceroute isn't a type of ICMP packet. I think Unix uses UDP probes. Windows might still use ICMP, and they just changed the TTLs. And then ICMP type 11s are sent back. I don't see a reason you couldn't use type 11s to tunnel traffic.
Yeah, not that I can think of.
And someone else is asking, what's the reason for the death of ping command?
I'm not familiar with that command.
I think they're referring to the what you were
Ping of
mentioning
death.
earlier.
The ping of death attack?
Yeah.
What was the exact question again?
What's the reason for the ping of death packet? Hannah, do you want to take that, or would you like me to?
You can go ahead.
Okay. The whole idea with ping of death is that you send a series of packets which, when they arrive at the other end, have to be reassembled. And because of the way the packets were constructed, when they're reassembled, they are larger than the maximum allowable packet. So a lot of early operating systems would say, oh, let me go and glue that back together, and suddenly realize that they were trampling over memory that wasn't part of the original buffer. And that could either just cause memory corruption or a system crash, but it could also cause remote code execution if you planned it out very carefully.
Yeah, so it's not even, well, so some needed multiple packets, some only needed one. So to go back to what Bill was saying, the RFC stated, thou shalt not have a datagram larger than 65,535 bytes. And the problem at the time was not a single programmer said, well, what, I know I'm not supposed to, but what if I see a datagram bigger than that? So yeah, there was no bounds checking done. So what happened with some operating systems was when you sent a datagram larger than 65,535 bytes, like Bill said, it overrode another area of memory, which was typically that platform's IP stack. So it wouldn't kill the entire system, but it would knock it off the network because the IP stack had become corrupted. With some operating systems, and I know Windows was one of them, you only needed to send one packet. You only needed to send the packet that had an offset just below 65535, but enough data to go past 65535. And that one small packet on its own was enough to make the system die. I know because I used to use that when we were playing Network Doom against each other. So if someone came in the room and had the jump on me and they were going to kill me, I could ping of death their system. That would get their interface to stop responding. I could then easily kill their character, take all their gear, and run out of the room before they got the stack working again.
And you're talking about me being the evil one. Come on, Chris.
All right.
I like Sen's comment. I mean, who would ever use a program in a way not intended by the creator? So
Exactly.
So
I could definitely imagine myself as a programmer, like seeing that vulnerability and thinking, I'll fix this before we release it, and then just completely forgetting it. To be fair to them.
Entirely
possible. Funny historical story. So when Ping of Death came out, it basically was killing everything on the internet except for like BSD. BSD mysteriously patched like a month before that exploit came out. What was funny was the way Microsoft originally tried to patch it was they released a new version of Ping that would not let you specify a datagram larger than 65535. They didn't fix the IP stack at first. They just replaced the Ping executable, thinking, oh, well, hey, this fixes the problem because you know, as we know, 100% of the internet runs on Windows and 100% of the internet installs every patches. This will fix it, of course.
Facepalm, facepalm, facepalm.
All right, so I am seeing some more questions, one of which I'm going to cover real quick before I ask you some more stuff, Hannah. But I think it's Boludo Cyber is asking, Hannah and ACM team, is there a patron or PayPal page to donate for these great classes? So Active Countermeasures ourselves does not have anything like that, but we are actually part of a larger group of companies, and one of our sister companies is called Anti-Siphon InfoSec Training. It used to be part of Wild West Hacking Fest, and now it's branched off to be its own company, which has its own website now. And we'll share a link into the Discord chat in a minute here. But the Anti-Siphon InfoSec training group does offer pay what you can classes. So if you really enjoy the material that you get from us or from Black Hills or from Wild West or from Anti-Siphon, the best way you can kind of help donate to what we do is by taking one of our pay what you can classes. So there's a couple different ones to choose from. One of which is one Chris actually teaches, that's a packet decoding class. But with those, you can pay anywhere between $25 to $4.95 for the classes. And Hannah, somebody is asking, I was unable to understand the slide, IPv6 return of ping. Could you please explain it again?
So this is just when I was talking about the newer version of the ping of death that occurred in the way the operating system handled IPv6 router advertisements. So it's a very similar attack that wasn't patched until just last year. That's essentially the same. There was no check in place for if the router advertisement was larger than it should be. And that could cause the system to crash, or in theory, remote code execution, although I don't think there was any instances of that actually being used by an attacker.
So basically, if an exploit relies on a lack of bounds checking or a lack of data scrubbing, we will fix it, and then it's typically a 7 to 12 year cycle before, and it'll come back again. It seems to take about that long for us to forget to do data scrubbing and bounds checking again on that same input variable. So
we'll see y'all in the 2029 version of this webcast, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
We are getting a few questions about like the advanced threat hunt class and some other stuff like that, but I'm not seeing anything directed towards Hannah as of right now. Unless
the advanced threat hunt class, I am actually in the middle of doing the biggest rewrite of that since I created the class. I literally went through, updated the entire platform, and I'm literally going through every single slide again. So I forget when that class gets offered again, Shelby. I think it's December.
It is. It's December 13 through 16.
Cool. So yeah, but I'll have a lot of new content as part of that. So
awesome. Well, and for anybody who is new to the Active Countermeasures group, we do also offer a free threat hunt training about once a month. It's a 6-hour training that we do. We actually have one that was supposed to be yesterday, but Chris ended up in jury duty, so we had to reschedule it for next week. So I'm going to share the link to that inside of the Discord chat as well for everybody, in case you're interested in taking that as well.
Yeah, and they didn't want me for jury duty. It's kind of funny when an insurance company is involved in the lawsuit and you tell them to your face, well, let's be honest, insurance companies aren't there to help people, they're there to make money. So of course they're not going to pay out unless they absolutely have to. All of a sudden their lawyers get really nervous and they don't want you on the jury. I don't understand why that happened to me. And yeah, I did literally tell their lawyers that almost word for word. So.
Oh, that's perfect. Hey, you got to be honest, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Danny's saying, newbie here, looking forward to the threat hunting intro. Yeah, it's a fun class, dude. It's a fun class. It's about half. So this is the class next Tuesday that Shelby was talking about. This is the free intro to threat hunting. It's about 6 hours. It's about half lecture and it's about half hands-on labs. you've got 3 options for the labs. We have a VM that's designed to run under VMware. We have another one that's designed to run under Oracle. And then there's a awesome script that Bill wrote up that you can basically set up your own system and just run the script, and that'll pull the data files down. It'll make sure that you have the apps you need for doing the lab. But if you're in an environment where you've got like a slow connection to the internet, or one that like pukes when it tries to download a 3 gig VM, that script is a much better way to go. But we'll be doing that next Tuesday in Cyberfish. That's correct. I am talking about the level 1 class. So that's the one that'll be taking place next Tuesday. And then the advanced class is in December.
Yes.
And I just have to say, like, so Shelby was talking about, like, if you want to give us money, sign up for one of the pay what you want classes. This is the first company I've ever been at that we've had this problem, and I have to say it's absolutely awesome, because I've run into situations where, like, people send us checks, and they'll send us a check and just say, thank you, can you like take people out to lunch? And it's an awesome thought, but from a corporate standpoint, what do you do with that money, right? It's income that came into the company. You have to declare it some way, but it didn't come in through a product, so it's been kind of a cool problem to have. How do we deal with people who want to send us money just because they like us? We don't have a business model for that. And as Shelby said, yeah, now we kind of do. You can sign up, you can get some good course training, and if you want to throw a couple extra bucks in there, hey, go for it, type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it's.
Are there any thoughts on using remote desktop and making a VM environment using for the labs? So Zab, yeah, absolutely. So for the level 1 class, you could actually spin up a cloud instance. In fact, one of the things, again, I'm always saying nice things about Bill, and he is a nicer guy than I make him out to be. I want to be very clear about that. One of the cool things Bill did is he got an agreement going with DigitalOcean, where on the threat hunting page, which if we can share a link to that, that would be cool. If you follow the link to go to DigitalOcean, you can sign up for an account. They give you, it's like basically running the VM, you'll get about a month's free worth of service out of them. And just by clicking the link, you can go spin the VM up and get things going, which, by the way, Bill, I think we need to update that VM. I think it's out of sync with the updated one. You and I can chat about that offline. But perfect. Yeah, you don't have to click a couple of links and you can spin it up in a cloud environment, even if you don't have a public cloud account today. That's really cool. So yeah, you don't even need to do like a remote desktop thing. You can just SSH in and do all the labs that way.
I do want to clarify that a little bit. We have had a couple of people who said that DigitalOcean did not give them that offer, and I honestly can't figure out why, but I'm only saying that because as a general rule, people sign up, they can do the entire class, they've still got $80 worth of DigitalOcean credit left over, and for a few people, maybe it's region based, I don't know why they don't get that offer. So
oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the best I can give you. Sorry.
Okay. Well, so if it doesn't work while you're within DigitalOcean, maybe you can, Azure Eek, or like Amazon too, or you can, the cheapest, easiest way to go, download VMware Player or Oracle VirtualBox. I always choke on my own throat when I say Oracle. I'm sorry, but you can download one of those and just run it as a VM, and you'll be in good shape too.
All right, and Jack had asked us, I'm currently doing malware analysis in my current career. May I ask, do you offer any malware analysis training? So we don't have an actual course around malware analysis, but we do have the, I'm losing the name right now, the awesome blogs that Keith and Hannah do that I can't remember. Malware of the Day. That's it.
Yeah, Shelb, I can't remember if there's one on the anti-siphon side.
You know what? There currently isn't anything that's I would consider directly related to malware analysis, but it is definitely something we should look into doing in the future. So
yeah,
stay tuned. But in the meantime, check out the Malware of the Day blog posts that Keith and Hannah do over on the Active Countermeasures website.
Those are traffic analysis, not like if you're looking for decompiling the binaries and stuff. So this is taking a look at the traffic and what the requests look like and fun stuff like that.
Yeah, which I'll be honest, to me, in a lot of ways, it's a little more helpful. You know, one of the problems with analysis of the malware binaries is that you have to know which system is infected. You have to know what got through. You have to catch it before they clean the system up. There's a lot of things to make it difficult to actually go after it. Whereas, and you got to hope they're not hiding their processes, and they're better at hiding their processes than you are at actually, you know, imaging RAM and everything else. By looking at the network, they can't hide that stuff. They can try and mix it in with normal traffic. But, you know, as Hannah so eloquently said, you know, abnormal is abnormal. You still have the ability to extract that out and say, whoa, wait a minute, this looks odd. And what's cool is it can be a hidden process on that system generating the C2 channel. Those packets are still fully visible on the network. So you will actually detect that C2 channel. You can see, hey, that system looks like it's whacked. Even if you go to the box and you can't find the process generating the traffic, you know it generated the traffic. You can see it, it's there. You know it's in a compromised state. So the network stuff to me, and I'll admit I'm a little bit biased as a network guy, but I have done forensics in my past too. I prefer the network just because it's cleaner and more pure.
Also, there's Beaker for tracking which specific processes created which network connections.
Oh, great point, Hannah. Yeah.
Yes, and Beaker is another open source tool by Active Countermeasures that you could check out on our website. So we'll share a link to that in the Discord chat as well. And we are past the top of the hour now, so I think it's about time that we wrap things up. I do want to give another huge shout out to Hannah for the presentation today. We've been waiting for the Lord of the Pings one for a little while, so it was awesome to be able to sit through it.
Shelby was so excited she moved it up a month.
I did, yes.
Yeah, a shout out, thank you to Hannah for doing this. In a bad bill, you get a spanking for recommending to people they set the hidden flag in IPv6.
Why not? Why wouldn't you just do that all the time?
Man.
I'm
So
wondering how many people are looking that up right now.
Exam, so.
Sorry, Hannah, I interrupted you.
Oh, I was just saying I have to run to campus and take an exam, so I might leave you guys now.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Awesome.
Good luck.
Well, before we all go, I do just want to also do a shameless plug for our commercial tool, AC Hunter. So we have our open source tool, Rita, and then we have a fancy version of it with a nice user interface called AC Hunter. You can learn more about it on our website, or you can respond demo into the GoToWebinar chat, and we'll reach out to you personally for a demo of our tool, AC Hunter. Along with that, there is one other webcast I want to plug real quick before we go. So a while back, Bill did a webcast called How to Build a Raspberry, or How to Use a Raspberry Pi as a Network Sensor. I'm going to share the YouTube link to that for anybody who hasn't seen that webcast, but it was a very popular one we did back in the beginning of 2020. And next month, Bill is going to be doing a part 2 to this webcast. And we expect it to fill up quick, so I wanted to let you guys know about it first. And I will share a link now for anyone to register who wants to.
Yeah, just let Hannah name it. She does a better job at naming these things than Bill does.
She sure does,
I do, or
100%.
anybody else for that matter. Yeah, absolutely. She puts a lot more thought into the title and the whole bit. So.
And I've got to give a thanks to the Discord user JD50, who you will soon meet as Jim Ducroisset, who's going to be doing most of that presentation and cleaning up all the stuff that I screwed up. Which is why it has to be an hour-long presentation just to do that last part.
All right, folks. Hey, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. And everybody enjoy the rest of your time zone.
Yes, and we will see you in the next webcast.
Cheers.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Hannah.
Same.